Thank you all for coming to our talk about GWT.create, the perfect component for a good project. My name is Julien Dramaix. I'm a software architect at Arby's. I'm coming from Belgium.
I am Manuel Carrasco. I am from Spain. I am the VP of engineering at Togwheel. I love open source, so I am committed of Jenkins, a member Apache of James, and also I have made many contributions to the GWT world.
So before starting, I have a question for you. We know here what GQuery is. I think it's okay. So GQuery is a JavaScript library that makes things like HTML transversal, document manipulation, event handling, Ajax, and animation much, much simpler. And it's a very nice JavaScript library that allows you to do a lot of things in a few lines of code. So the motto of GQuery is write less, do more. And GQuery is widely used in the world. More than 50% of websites include GQuery. Now, what is GWT.create? GWT.create is the port of jQuery to Grid. It's not a wrapper of the JavaScript library. It's an entire rewrite of jQuery using Grid. So you can take advantage of the compiler optimization, like the compiler will remove the code of the library that you don't use. But with GWT.create, we try to keep the same API and the same syntax that as jQuery. So if you are familiar with jQuery, it will be very easy for you to use GWT.create in your project. Of course, there are slight differences in terms of syntax because we are using Java, and with jQuery, the people use JavaScript. But what is important is that we want to keep the same spirit of jQuery. Write less, do more is still valid with GWT.create. And this is the goal of this presentation, in fact. We want to show you that GWT.create can be very helpful for you. And in some cases, it will allow you to implement things faster than in pure Grid. Yeah, a little precision to avoid confusion during this talk. When we talk about jQuery, we will use the term jQuery, and when we talk about the port of jQuery in Grid, we will use GWT.create. It's important because in some language like French, jQuery is pronounced GQuery, and GQuery is pronounced jQuery, so it's a mess at the end. So. This is what jQuery code looks like at your left. So as you see, we select all the header of articles that are not hidden. We set the width of all header equal to the width of a main header. We add a click under, and when the user click, we load the content using an Ajax request, and when the Ajax request is done, we use an animation to show the content. And this is done with, I will say, 6 lines of code. And at your right, this is the same code, but using GWT.create. So first, the $ method is a static method in the jQuery class. So you have to, if you want that your code look like the jQuery code, you have to import it, the static method before with an import static. But the code is really the same. So we select the header, we set the width, we add the click under, and when the user click, we load the content with an Ajax request, and we show the content with an animation. The only difference here is that in JavaScript, you can use a function as argument of a method of another function, but we cannot do that in Java. So we create an object function that will make this behavior. Oops, sorry. But the question is when to use GWT.create. Often people think that GWT.create can be used only in a progressive enhancement scenario. But what does progressive enhancement mean? Oh, you have to, for the progressive enhancement, you have an existing HTML, it's the DOM tree there. And on top of this HTML, you will add some layer of JavaScript and CSS in order to make your page more client-side interactive, to improve the user experience, to make it more user-friendly, more beautiful. So it's like this tree is the simple tree. You add some decoration, it's become a Christmas tree, and it's more beautiful. But you can take, as an example, the gridproject.org website. In fact, GQuery is used here to progressively enhance the HTML of the website. So it's used to manage the left side menu, for example, and it's used also to manage the click event on internal links of the website. So when you click on the internal links, GridQuery will get the content via an AJAX request, and when you receive the content, it will replace the whole article with the new content. So you don't have a page reload, the menu is not run again, and so on. But if you disable the JavaScript in your browser, the website will continue to work. So, for example, the website Google is able to index this website. So this is often the common definition of progressive enhancement. Existing API, and you add some layer of CSS and JavaScript. But for us, it's not just that. I mean, GridQuery can be used in other scenarios than simply to enhance existing HTML. And the first one is enhance existing widget. You know, the API of the widget in Grid is sometimes too close. So you don't have access to some element or method to modify your widget in order to fulfill your need, just because the method of the field is private or package protected. But GridQuery can help you for doing that. And I will show you an example. I don't know. Where's my mouse?
Yeah, push on example.
No, it's here because with the Wi-Fi, I don't know. So this is the example I wrote for the presentation on the future support of CSS3 that I did this morning. This is a simple cell list widget inside Infinity and with a pager that will add item when the scroll will reach the bottom. So it's exactly, you can find this kind of cell list in the showcase. The code is coming from the Grid showcase. And I will show you that here, simply by adding or removing some CSS class, we can make this, this cell list more sexy. The way I prefer this one, but and so here I'm using to build this example. I'm using GridQuery because I had to figure out if an item of the cell list is visible or not inside the pager. And when it's visible, I remove a class, and so the CSS3 transition occurs. And I'm using GridQuery to do that in a few lines of code. And I don't modify the code of the cell list. It's what is important. It's really enhancement. Okay. So, sorry. GQuery can help you also to create new widgets. So you can consider that your widget can be composed of pure HTML, and you had GridQuery code to implement the behavior of your widget. And then, if you need, you can wrap your HTML and your GridQuery code in a composite widget to allow people to use it as a normal widget. And this is an example of a widget entirely created by using HTML GridQuery. Is Grid chosen? Grid chosen is a component that allows you to make long, unwieldy select box much more user-friendly. So this is the list of all countries in the world. And so when you open the component, we show the list of all the countries in the scrollable list. You can also start to filter, and we show all the selected element in one line, and you can use a keyboard to. So it's a really nice component, but it's entirely written using HTML and GWT.create. And this is also progressive enhancement because this component doesn't support Internet Explorer 6. That means that, but if you use it in Internet Explorer 6, you will have the normal select HTML elements. So your application will continue to work, but it's less user-friendly because you have a long list. Oops. Oops. And GWT.create can help you also to not to use widget when it's not mandatory. You know, widgets are heavy, and a good practice is to use as much HTML as you can in your application. But sometimes I see people that's using widgets just to listen the click event. But why? Why? You just have to use a normal HTML element, a div or a span, and use GWT.query to warn you when the user click on the element. You don't need a widget for that. And as a consequence, your application will run faster because GWT will not need to instantiate your widget to inject it into the DOM and manage the usual workflow of the widget, so it's called the onload, unattached, undetached, and so on. And also, you will have more control on the resulting HTML. This is typically how I develop my view in the MVP pattern. I mean, in my view, I'm using UI Binder when I try to use as much HTML as I can. And when I have to modify or to interact with this HTML, I'm using GWT.query for doing that.
Okay, after this introduction to GWT.query and knowing some reasons to use it and where to use it, let me introduce the list of features that we have in GWT.query. Right, the first set of features are just the feature we have in GWT.query for years, right? So we have selectors for the DOM, also transversal selector, easy Ajax syntax instead of using a standard way in GWT, etc. So, because we have not enough time to see all this set of features, we are going to center or focus on the last one marked with an arrow, because are new features in GWT.query which are not well documented in our site, and also they were released last week in San Francisco, right? So Julian, continue with the first feature, or new feature in the library.
So sorry. The first good feature of GWT.query is the event handling. It's very easy with GWT.query to attach event handler to any elements or any widgets. What you need is to select the elements. For example, we select an element having the ID console and use the on method. And on the on method, you specify the event type that you want handle, and you give your callback. But as you see in the second example, we can handle any type of event supported by the browser. So here, for example, I will just listen on the transition end event. Is the event that is fired by the browser when a CSS3 transition completes. And in the last example, you see that like with any GWT.create method, we can handle methods directly on widget. So I create an HTML widget that I put in the DOM, and after that I can listen the mouse over and the mouse out, the mouse out level in order to resize the console. Alors, the presentation here is a good application. So when I will click on the green arrow, it just runs this example. And so this is the console. So when I click on the console, it's really awesome, no? And when my mouse is over, the console is resizing, and we receive the transition and event. So okay, I'll show you how it's easy to add an event handler, but often it's useful to be able to remove the handler. So jQuery has the off method for that. So you can remove handler by event type. You can remove many handlers of different types at once. You just have to specify a space or comma separated list of event type. And you can also remove specific handler by giving it as a parameter of the off method. So here so the handler of the previous slide are still working. And if I unbind, okay, it doesn't work anymore. And here, if you click, it will only work one time. Okay, so it works fine, as expected. So, a new feature in event handling on GWT.create is to be able to handle custom events. So we've seen so far that we are able to handle any event fired by the browser, but now we are now able to handle custom events. And by custom events, I mean your own event, your application event. So let's take this example. I will add into the DOM a button linked to an input text. And when I will click on this button, I will just send the content of the input to the console. But for that, the button will trigger a custom event called send to the console, and the console will just listen on this event. That's how it works. And this should be considered as an alternative to Event Bus, because you need only a few lines of code where you need to define a class, an interface, and use the Event Bus object to do that with pure GWT. And it's really nice, for example, if you have to prototype something in a few lines of code, this works. And the last thing I want to talk to you about event handling is event delegation. Event delegation is really a nice feature that I think that not a lot of people is using. But first, what is event delegation? So the definition is there is a mechanism of handling the event via a single common ancestor rather than on each child descendant. Let's take the example. When I will click on the green arrow here, I will add and click under on the console. But this click under will handle the click event occurring on each child run of the console. So when we add a message on the console, we just append a division having the class console item. And so now when I will click on each item, the handler will be executed and he will hide the item. So let's and I can add, each time I had a division, a message to the console, I don't reapply the event handler on each element. It's what is important here. So we only add the event handler once, and after that it will work with any future element that you will add into the DOM. And this is the mechanism used by the cell widget. You know the cell widget. And this is one of the reasons of why the cell widget are efficient. Is because you add the event handler only once, and you don't have to reapply the event handler each time you add or remove a cell. So the cell widget can modify or replace its inner HTML very quickly and very efficiently. So it's something that you have to use in your application.
All right. Promises. Who knows what promises are? Quite few people. So let me introduce what promises are. So promises is something which people invent in order to avoid this kind of code. You know, pyramid of doom is something which happens very frequently in JavaScript and also in GWT. Because almost everything is asynchronous, what we do normally is have a callback inside a callback inside a callback, etc. So for doing simple things, asynchronous things, like this example, which what we are trying to do is just drop 2 balls from the up to the bottom. Then when both rises the floor, we are going to drop another ball, and finally the other one when it finishes. And at the end, we are going to move all of them out of the slide and print a message in the console, right? So we need all this code, and this code is few code because we are using animations in GQuery. We are not using any other thing like animations in GWT, right? So it's very simplified, but as you can see, it's almost impossible to figure out what the code is doing, right? If we push, I don't know, what is the mouse? What is?
On the computer.
Yeah, it should. Yeah. So I have to move.
In the other side, yeah.
In the other side, okay. Oh, yeah. Engineering, 6 years of engineering to do that. Sorry. Okay. Both balls were dropped at the same time. So we have to know when the last one finished, and then that's all, right? That is a typical example of something asynchronous. Maybe when we drop the first 2 balls, can be logging into your application and also get credentials from Facebook, then write a message and then save it somewhere, right? If we see the same example, but using promises, it's quite few code, right? We have a help function at the top of the code, and this function is just to drop a ball, right? It's just plain code, you know. So when we read the code, what it says is when we drop the ball blue and also we drop the ball red, then drop the ball yellow, then drop the ball green, then move everything to the left, and when everything is done, show a message in console, right? If we run this, it's exactly the same effect. And you see that the language is much more declarative. Also, it implies less errors when you are programming, right? So promises in GWT.create are implemented using the common JS promises A+ specification. So what we have done is when promises were introduced in jQuery, we got the same idea, and also we had to do the same. So we have re-implemented everything in using GWT, of course, but also our implementation works in JavaScript, but also in Java virtual machine. So because synchronous processes normally are used in activities on presenters, you can test your code in the JVM, right? The implementation in GQuery is done basically with two classes, right? One is an interface, is the promise, and the other one is the deferred object. And in jQuery, they do exactly the same, but using JavaScript, right? The promise interface guarantees that you are not going to modify the final status of the promise. So the promise only have an status, is at the same time is when we create a new deferred object, is then we can reject the process if it fails, or resolve the promise, right? So the code, basically, this is a summary of how to use this object, right? So what you have to do in your code, where you are coding your asynchronous process, is instantiate a deferred object, and then with this deferred object, get its promise and append anywhere in your code new functions to the queue of the fail, of the done, or always, etc. Right? And then in your code, you can notify how the asynchronous process is going. Also, you can reject, or you can resolve it. Right? In this example, what happens is that first we notify the deferred, so the state of the promise is not finished. Then we reject the deferred, but we cannot use the deferred anymore. If we don't notify, or we try to resolve, it's not going to work, right? So let me run the example, and you see in the log. At the beginning, we can use progress to notify the promise how it's going. Then the state is pending. We break the deferred using the reject. So this is the line broke, and so we can pass data to the promises. So that is the message we write when we reject the promise, the deferred. But also, as you see, the next notification is not going to the promise because it's rejected, sorry, and we cannot change the status with resolving again. But what we can do is add new functions to the queue. So we can add a new function to the always method of the promise. So it's going to be executed immediately if the promise has finished, right? So it's a way to catch things. So when you have, for instance, you depend on a logging process, you can use this promise anywhere in your code, and if the logging has not been done, your callbacks are going to be pending until it's resolved, right? Well, next, a new feature in GWT.create 1.4 is that we have animations, but we also had animations. But now what we have done is chain animation with CSS3 animations when possible. So without changing any line of your code, if you are using GWT code, what happens is that GWT will use CSS3 animation. CSS3 animations has several advantages. So, as you say, normally animations are performed using JavaScript timers. So what JavaScript does is has a timer which is calling to itself until the animation finishes. So what is doing the timer is modifying each parameter in the CSS in order to move the element or to change the color, etc. Okay. So with CSS3 animations, we only change properties at the beginning of the animation. So your browser, your JavaScript is not doing anything. It's natively the browser is moving those elements. So it's very useful for mobile because mobile are devices with low resources, right? If we run some example, it's this animation is done just with this code. So we have a GQuery logo, and we are moving with this line, etc. So basically, the syntax of animation is the same than jQuery, except that we use the $$ method to convert a string to a property JavaScript file, right? So jQuery comes with a set of predefined animations. For instance, fade out is this code in the center or in the bottom. In black is just take the logo, change the jQuery object to a effect object, and fade out, right? Actually, the parameters of the animation is opacity, height. It's the same syntax that jQuery has, right? You can, all right. So if we run, for instance, this transformation, this is a customized transformation. It's not part of the set of predefined animations. It's just for this presentation. What we do is something like that. Are animations that you can see normally on mobile, right? We can restore the element, and we can disable CSS3 because maybe you have an animation which fails with this approach. So if we disable, what does jQuery is fall back into the last implementation. So for instance, if we run this animation, it's going just to do something. It's changing only CSS2 attributes, right? Animations, right? More things in GWT.create. If we can run the same example we had below with promises, but using CSS3 animation, because CSS3 animation has some parameters like delay. So with running this code, just one, you are going to have the same effect, but without having to modify or to wait when a ball has finished, right? So much less code for mobile or for in general. Okay, it's the same. Only playing with delays and durations. So also you don't have to know so much about transformations in CSS3 because what we have done is unify the syntax. So you are using the delay, and delay in CSS3 is going to, you have to put it in the transformation attribute of CSS. Also, you have to compute which is the appropriate prefix for the device, etc., for the vendor of the browser. More things we have in GWT.create are classes we need for other things, but you can use in GWT. For instance, we have a class to implement the flags jQuery has, and is the browser class. So in jQuery, they have a browser object when you can ask if you are running in a Mozilla browser, WebKit, etc. Right? So we have done the same, but taking advantage of GWT.create. So what we do is implement this class, but with a generator. So each flag is true or false. So when a flag or a method in GWT.create returns true or false, if in compiler time, the compiler is able to remove everything in a block if it computes that the condition is false, right? So what happens with this code is that in any place in your code you have something like browser.webkit. What happened is that this code is only in the WebKit permutation at the end. So it's a way to use to remove code for certain browsers without having to use deferred binding, because deferred binding needs to define interfaces or abstract classes for each feature in each browser, and also you can only remove methods that you put in these classes, but not a simple block of code anywhere in your code, right? Also, we have a utility class like console. Console is a class which is able to accept or to send to execute functions in the console of the browser. So the browser console is pretty nice because you can, for instance, start timers or start the profile and many things, and you don't have access to this object from GWT, right? You have to write some native code to have access. So what in GWT.create you have is access to those methods, but also what we do is, depending on the browser, those methods are disabled or enabled, and your code is not going to raise any exception, right? And also, the console class is injected using deferred binding. So if you want, you can change the behavior and you can implement the console class for production, for instance, sending messages to the log or to the Java logger or whatever. Right? In this code, what happens is that we have defined the console to send messages to the console in the presentation, right? Okay, so here we have the uncouch exception handler is redefined, so as everything happening in asynchronous processes and it's not couched by anything is going to this console, right? That's a runtime exception, so that's more things. What we have in GWT.create is many utilities to avoid writing native code, because native code normally is a pain, right? Because normally, if you don't have the appropriate plugin for your IDE, you have JavaScript in blocks like this. Actually, they are comments, Java comments, because the Java compiler doesn't understand it, only the GWT compiler, right? So, and also, normally when I have this kind of code, it's a source of many problems in your application, mistakes in writing JavaScript, etc. So, what we have is some methods in the JS util class, like run an external JavaScript function, like push state is a function to change the URL, or what else? yeah, to select nodes in the DOM using the query selector all. Okay, so if you run this, yeah, this code is the equivalent to that one. Okay, so when you run this, you have changed. You see, you have changed the URL in at the top, and also send it to the console. Now we have again the correct URL at the top when we have changed the slide. Also, yeah, we can read properties from JavaScript and also execute a function in JavaScript, but also we can do the inverse. You can export a Java method to JavaScript just writing something like that, because the normal way to export a Java method to JavaScript is, apart from using GWT exporter, is writing something like that and dealing with this kind of syntax in the JSNE code, right? So what this doing is we have a method foo in the JavaScript window object, and when we call in JavaScript the foo method, what happened is that we are going to execute the function in Java and just send to the log the arguments of the function. The function class in GQuery has some cool methods like dump arguments to know what have you in the class, right? So if we run this, we have exported the foo method, and we can. This is a JavaScript console, and you can call the foo. If I write foo correctly, because this is a keyword, a French keyword. Yeah, it's a function, right? We can run foo. Okay, I don't know where the. Sorry, it's a French keyboard. It's difficult. It has all keys in order. I don't know why. Yeah.
You have to speed up.
Okay. A new thing in GWT is bundles, right? I think. Okay. Thank you. In new version of GWT, they are going to have these features as well, or kind of these features, because Rai has been talking about that. Bundles, what we have, because in GWT we have bundles of CSS, we have text resources, but we cannot get JavaScript from a file and insert it in a native method. So as we can take an external library, or even we can write JavaScript by hand and test it in our browser, reload in a fast way instead of having to recompile the application. And finally, insert that code in JavaScript, sorry, in Java, using native code. The advantage of this way of doing things is that a generator from GWT is able to get this code, read this code, parse this code in order to escape certain character that can be dangerous in the comment block, and finally the compiler, what it's going to do is obfuscate this code and compress this code, and also run if you run the closure compile, it's going to remove some code from the library. Okay. Also, you don't have to put this external JavaScript in your HTML tag script, etc. So, if you don't use in your application, this method with the native JavaScript is not going to be in the final block of JavaScript. For instance, this is an example of using these bundles, and what we can do is defining an interface like jQuery bundle. We can import the jQuery library in our application, right? And also, you can define instead of an interface abstract class, so as you can include as well customized method like draw chart. What we are doing here is importing the jQuery library, also the high charts library, and finally using some methods here. We can run the JavaScript function from the high charts. So if we run this, we have it's importing jQuery, and also if we write here, for instance, jQuery, I'm writing no. jQuery. Yeah, this is a method in the DOM now because we have imported jQuery. The next slide, I think I'm running out of time, so yeah, is JSQuery. JSQuery is something like it's a GWT query plus GWT exporter is able to populate all this API in GWT query to JavaScript, so as you don't have to import jQuery in your application if you are using a jQuery plugin, right? It works fine, but not. Sometimes you can have problems, right? Because it's very difficult to have the same behavior in that. So this is the same example than before, but using in this example we have not imported jQuery, right? So there are companies or products like Badin which import jQuery in their products in order to draw charts. So with this approach, they can save, I don't know, but maybe 80 kilobytes of JavaScript because high chart only use a few methods from jQuery. And I think that's all. There are a couple of demonstration of plugins. Reload.
Quickly, we have a plugin system in GQuery like jQuery has. I will not show you how the plugin system works, but I will just show you some demonstration of plugin that we worked before. So it's a GWT chosen. GWT chosen I already show you before. So it's for tuning lists like this in a very nice component when you do search and so on. Really nice. We have also a tooltip plugin that was written by RB's company is to be able to add any tooltip on any widget or any element, and the plugin has with all GWT plugin is really fully configurable. So, for example, you can put the tooltip to left, to right, to top, to bottom, or change. Anyway, it's really nice. It is a cell list when we can add a tooltip to give more information, or we use it sometime to do a form validation. And the third plugin I want to show you is the drag and drop plugin for GWT. In fact, it allows you to implement drag and drop for all elements and for all widgets. So, for example, here is a portlet sample. So it's a sample where we can reorder the different portlet, and in few lines of code, we implement this kind of behavior. And what is nice with this plugin is that it handles, you can add drag and drop inside your cell widgets. So for example, here, this is a cell list, this is a cell tree, so we can move item from cell list to cell widget, or we can even reorder the cell tree, or reorder all the node, and that's it. Voila, we are done with our talk. So we don't have time for questions, unfortunately. So if you have questions, we are there. So don't hesitate to come and say hello. We will answer to your question. Thank you.
Thank you.